Hey guys, Demon Folklorist Victoria Jaye here, and today we're going to be talking about demons, shadow people, and skinwalkers, differentiation through classification. So, because classification is such an in depth process, first we're going to be going over some definitions. Then I'll be showing you classification basics and examples, what markers are and how I determine them, how do we tell the difference between these different entities, what is the progression of experiences, and then where is the overlap in the phenomena. I'll also talk about potential issues in this type of research. To be able to talk about demons, we have to go back to ancient times. When the Yahweh cult was just starting out and grew into what became Christianity, everything that was not of God and his angels automatically was called a demon. And this happened to not just people who were against the Yahweh cult, but also it happened to deities that were once worshipped. It happened to any spirit that was roaming around during the time period. So when I flip through the dictionary of demons, for instance, and I see that a particular demon is interested in helping people, that isn't a demon, in my opinion. They sound a little bit more like jinn or a jinn like creature because unfortunately, demons don't like humans and they will never do anything to help anybody unless they are bound by very, very dark magic and eventually they break out of it. So, something to keep in mind as we go through this, that this classification error has persisted for millennia. So, it's really hard for people to realize what a demon is and what a demon isn't. This is how I define them. I define them by what they can do and not what they are. So, a demon is a spirit in that they exist without bodies, possess abilities greater than that of humans, which renders them inhuman. They are hyper intelligent. They react negatively to Christian religious iconography, and they are malevolent in their behavior towards humans. A shadow person is a humanoid supernatural entity. They're usually very tall and much darker than the darkness surrounding them. There are several different types of shadow people, which we see in Rosemary Ellen Guiley's work on the subject. There are sentinels who stand and watch. They don't really tend to move or do much else. Lurkers will move around a lot more than a sentinel, but they'll still sort of stay within the same circular like pattern. MTB stands for minding their own business. These entities don't seem to know we're there. Or if they do, they don't care. They could simply be passing through if you see one. Predators seem to only want to cause harm and will attack people, and they want to create fear. Visitors are often described as otherworldly and often come in groups. Omens are there to portend something. It's usually negative, but not always, like death or a negative event happening to you in your life, or the emergence of something coming. But there have also been times that shadow people showed up to mark the beginning of a miracle. So hard to say what's going on there. And haunters are known for hanging out in haunted places. Skinwalkers are from Navajo culture. This is a person who went down what they call the witchery way and can now change into animals at will. This comes at great cost, according to the legends, because a great sacrifice is made, and this is normally in the form of somebody very close to them, usually a relative that the person loves, that they kill. Then they become pure evil. Skinwalkers are very interesting to me because they exist between the natural and the supernatural. In the legends, skinwalkers were not originally a horrible, evil presence. They were actually created to help protect the people and to help them. But over time, it became clear that people became seduced by the power of it and by their own greed. And through that folly, they ended up creating essentially this evil creature. And it's thought that whatever had made them into a shadow, or I'm sorry, not a shadow person, a skinwalker, was a like benevolent kind of possibly God, hard to say, but something offered them the same power at a much greater cost, and they ended up going with that. So that's the legend. They are very, very fast, these things. They can travel quickly, enslave the dead, read minds, and control night animals. The Ute believe that the Navajo cursed them, and the land that is now home to what is popularly known as Skinwalker Ranch, because of what the Ute did to the Navajo during wartime. And to me, that whole area, because I looked into the phenomena for a podcast episode, I think it's a portal field because of the way that entities are seen coming and going from these mysterious portals, how they sort of drop out of thin air and tracks will start out of nowhere. And the fact that high levels of radiation of all kinds have been measured on the premises and that people walk away from there with very bizarre cancers. So to me, it's just a very dangerous place for a human presence in general, skinwalkers or not. Now, when it comes to classification, the way that I personally do it is I use published narratives or people's personal experiences that they've given me permission to use. And I look for phenomena and I highlight the times when an entity has affected the physical world around you and how it affects the people who are nearby it. Then I organize that information by sight, sound, smell, and feeling. And patterns become clear when the information is organized. And that's how I determine markers for experiences. And markers are the way that the phenomena will happen in every single narrative that comes to define the experience. Let me show you what I mean. So, when you are looking into demon classification, one of the things that happens almost every time that a demon enters the room is an extreme temperature drop. That all the heat and all the warmth of a room will be absolutely sucked out of it. Now, I'm going to direct your attention to the highlighted portion, but really the purpose of this slide and the next two slides is to show you just how many times it happens. This is across 4 different books, and this is not even the full list. This is just what I could fit. So often the temperature would plummet in the parent house as something entered the room with them. You can see how many times this happened just in these 2 books. And by the parent house, I do mean, of course, the Conjuring House, as it's now known. And this is a good illustrative example of the way that this phenomena manifests. But really, just look how many times it happens in these narratives. Same thing with shadow people and dematerializing. So this just means they disappeared. And this will happen every single time somebody has come across a shadow person. They will dematerialize at some point in the experience. So the entity randomly disappeared after inducing a sleep paralysis experience, and this person's friend Lindsay had the same experience while visiting. This is interesting because sleep paralysis is thought to be a disconnect between your mind and your body as you're coming out of the sleep-wake cycle. And your mind is awake, but your body isn't, so it leaves you partially paralyzed, and you might see things called hypnagogic hallucinations. I've had hypnagogic hallucinations. They're very weird. Not being fully awake is a very strange experience. But what's interesting about this is that their friend, who also stayed with them at some point, had this same exact experience. So it indicates most likely, unless they are both prone to sleep paralysis, that it is actually this entity causing it and inducing that experience. And what I find interesting about a lot of supernatural narratives is that people will believe none of their senses until the moment that they see something. That's when they start to go, okay, maybe this is actually something paranormal. Skinwalkers will almost always have some type of hybrid creature. It's usually a cross between a dog, coyote, and a wolf, and will act in some way like a human or will transform back into a human. So one man witnessed a strange dog-like or human creature that came up to his house that walked on 2 legs and then ran away on 4 legs. This is also a very illustrative experience because people will watch these hybrids walk upright and even run upright. And then sometimes they'll drop down onto 4 legs right afterwards. So it seems that the 2 modes of transportation, which is not common in animals to be standing on their hind legs and walking like that, they can go with either one. When it comes to demonic markers, there are actually several. These are most of them. One of them that was not added is the Christian iconography, but that was in the definition. So, sorry. So, demonic markers are feeling that you are in the presence of evil, extreme temperature changes, usually towards cold, but it will at times lean towards hot as well. There is the sighting of a very tall, blacker than black shadow that radiates malice, horrific, sickening smells of rot, injuries, often scratches, but not always, and mysterious illness will arise. Sometimes people will lose their vitality. Other times people will have diseases that seemingly have no origin. There will be instances of rape in some of the more severe cases, and people experience being immobilized in its presence. And once again, the sort of like allergy, they are very bothered by Christian iconography. The way that I tend to differentiate demons from other types of negative supernatural experiences is through an acronym I call EPIM, which is evil presence, intensity, and malice. So you will always feel that presence of evil. And by evil, I don't mean negative, because I feel like a lot of people make that mistake that because they've never felt true, intense, malicious evil, they mistake, oh, well, this entity scared me. It must be a demon, because that's what the paranormal TV shows and demonic horror movies tell us. But evil is more like, not only does this thing want to kill you, it wants to torture you. Every cell in your body tells you to run, to get as far away from this thing as humanly possible. Then intensity is different for demons, because if you think of paranormal phenomena on a scale of 1 to 10, a demon will be a 20. And malice, as in it will be malicious in its behavior towards humans, very hateful. There is everything to indicate that demons hate humans. With shadow people, you will see a sighting of a tall black figure, much like with demons, except normally the difference is that they're usually wearing a hat or some type of hood. Now, the hood does come up in demonic experiences, but the real difference is that shadow people won't usually have features at all. And there is a sense of fear or dread associated with the presence, but it's not nearly to the level of a demon. They will rove very quickly through space and glide as if they're on water. There will be a sudden dematerialization of the entity at some point in the experience. And if they do speak aloud, they will communicate telepathically. So they won't actually speak aloud in the room, is what I mean. And Skinwalker markers are dead electronics, that sense of dread, unease, or fear again, a gross smell. We'll have orbs before and after the experience, deafening or unnatural silence. This is also called the Oz factor when it comes to UFO and extraterrestrial phenomena. And then hybrid creatures will be sighted. If they do make contact with humans in any way, it will be violently. People who have been on the ranch or in areas that skinwalkers are known to be, or if you are targeted by a skinwalker, will become suddenly very ill. And there will be unnaturally shaped tracks, like something that cannot be made normally, is what hunters often talk about, that this was not made by any animal they've ever seen. And the way that it is made, it indicates that their anatomy is much different than either a human or an animal and is a cross between the two. Now, when I talk about the progression of an experience, I'm talking about the way that it all manifests, like as a storyboard. So, the progression of a demonic experience is that you will feel evil within a specific room or area. Almost everybody feels it in their own way and then process the information the way they feel the best way to do that is because, say, somebody buys a new house and they get to the doorstep and something tells them that this is evil, this place is evil, that you need to leave. People will often not listen to that because who wants to believe that the new house that they just bought has something evil in it or even that it's haunted? There are many people who don't believe in ghosts or hauntings of any kind. So people will reject the information as it comes to them until they cite something. Now, slight things will start to go wrong around a demonically infested house. And this slowly progresses into infestation, oppression, and then possession. So, infestation is the stage where things go haywire. Crazy phenomena manifests. A demon could pick up a fridge and throw it, they could pick up you and throw you. Their abilities are much more intense than other types of supernatural experiences. Oppression is when a person is singled out to break down their mind, which primes them for possession, which is a very difficult thing to do to take somebody's will away from them. That's why the possession process is so horrific. It's because the person is fighting back. If the person simply gives in, the possession is much quicker and it doesn't involve such a horrific struggle between the person and this entity. And most people know what possession is, again, because of paranormal TV and demonic horror movies. Don't listen to the movies, guys. They are not accurate. The typical progression of a shadow person is that people will wake up suddenly to a shadow person staring at them, either from across the room or even weirder, up close and staring at you. They are often wearing a hat and some form of clothing. Their eyes might be glowing, and they don't really have any defined facial features that people can see. Then they will run away when they're acknowledged, or they'll simply dematerialize whether you acknowledge them or not. With skinwalkers, the typical progression is that electronics die immediately. Once you get there, you could have your phone, your flashlight, and your watch, and they'll all be dead within a matter of minutes, maybe even seconds. A strange smell will fill the air, kind of like wet dog or a rotting carcass left in the summer heat is reported. An agile, very fast hybrid wolf-like or coyote-like creature is often witnessed, though there have been times that people also witness predatory birds. And this will usually manifest in the skinwalker running away when humans spot them, not generally out of fear, but because they're seemingly doing something else. But if you come across them on the highway, sometimes they'll run alongside cars and they'll easily keep pace with you, whether you are going fast or not. Now, like I said, they don't usually engage with people, but if they do, it will be menacing. And people have often become sick after having an experience with them and Skinwalker Ranch. So, this sort of, with the progression of experiences, it fills in the gaps. Although you see a lot of the markers in the way that this progresses, it's because these patterns are happening over and over and over again to the point that you have pages of data of this specific phenomena almost every time that this specific entity comes up. So you have to be like, okay, maybe there's a pattern here. Maybe this is important to the way that these entities manifest in our world. So, how do we tell the difference? Personally, the way that I tell the difference is through progression of experience. So, how it's manifesting in that story, and also what is being manifested in the phenomena. And you begin to see those patterns, like I was saying. There is overlap, though, unfortunately. It would be so easy if it was like demons only do this, and skinwalkers and shadow people, which are commonly confused for each other, don't do any of these things, and we could just separate them out. That's not really how the paranormal works. So these are two different experiences of published narratives. You're not expected to know who Janet or Eric are. They're just two people who had told their story. The first one is a demonic experience, and the second is a skinwalker experience. The overlap here in the highlighted parts is that this is a hybrid. It had yellowish eyes. The fact that it suddenly dematerialized for Janet is very important. And also the fact that Eric's electronics died, which we know is a skinwalker marker, but it is also something that happens in demonic narratives. And Eric passing out is another thing that is very important. But there are other things happening in this narrative. So Janet felt a mist form and then felt she was unable to move. She saw a half human, half animal man standing in her room. It had neon yellow green eyes and animal horns. She felt it wanted to rape her. Janet did a Hail Mary and then sprayed it with holy water. Then it disappeared. Eric's electronics died and he saw movement. Upon investigation, he began to feel extremely ill and witnessed two dog-like or coyote-like creatures, but they were standing on their hind legs. They had yellow eyes, and he noticed a smell like a carcass rotting in the heat. Both of these creatures advanced upon him, and he shot them both, drawing blood, but they did not react when they were shot, and Eric then passed out. So you can see these are very different experiences, but there is that overlap. This, because you have to look at all of the ways that this phenomena manifests, this is also what I'm looking at. I look at the similarities and then I look at the differences. So Janet's experience also had a mist form. There was that immobilization, this malice and rape feeling that it wanted to rape her. This doesn't come up in a lot of other narratives. Skinwalkers, it's virtually unheard of. Same with shadow people. That isn't seemingly, anyway, what they're there for. And then the ability to make it leave with religious prayers and articles is important as well. Demons don't respond well to Christian iconography, but people have also reported that using Stars of David or Islamic prayer is also effective. It's hard to say whether other types of religions are as effective. I don't think there's been as much research done on the efficacy against demons, but potentially, yes, a Wiccan, pagan, which could use their religious articles to banish a demon away from them, at least for momentarily. That sort of thing doesn't get rid of them, unfortunately. If they were that easy to get rid of, I don't think they'd be as much of a problem. Though I do want to preface that with demons are very rare. So all of this fear surrounding them, as far as are they around every corner? Are they at the end of every Ouija board? No, they are not. True demonic experiences are incredibly rare. But with Eric's experience, the differences were that this thing was standing on its hind legs. It had a rotting smell, which is interesting because it was not overwhelming. It was something that was noted, but was not to the point where the person got sick or had to leave. That's when you know that it's a demon, because once again, they turn things up to 20 on a 10-point scale. And also the fact that though these skinwalkers were bleeding because they were shot, they did not react. Now, a demon or a shadow person, people have shot at them and nothing, because they seem to be in a more spiritual form, while skinwalkers do exist in the natural, but also seemingly supernaturally. There are potential issues with classification, unfortunately. So the potential for human error is vast. Like I was saying before, the idea of negative versus evil, people mistake them for each other. So if they had a really horrific negative experience or even something that tried to possess them, people forget that there are other types of spirits in the world that are capable of possession, that it isn't just a demon trick. Also, people focus on maybe one or two pieces of phenomena and point it maybe in the direction of, oh, it's a demon. Demons really up the ante, especially when it comes to views. So, something I've seen with YouTubers who have very popular shows, they will often feed into, and sometimes unconsciously, the everything is a demon narrative, which is a huge problem in the paranormal today because not everything is a demon. And a lot of people don't want to hear that or don't want to accept that there's the possibility that this is something else. I'm not sure why. I would rather it be something else because demons are notoriously difficult to get rid of if you have a true demon. So there are huge issues with people not classifying things correctly or not looking at the entire experience. And then there is the possibility of new evidence shifting the landscape of classification that wasn't previously reported. So, and what if it was a marker? What if it was something that defined skinwalkers from every single other type of phenomena, but it hadn't been reported enough or accurately, and then we find out about it, we would have to expand. So this is a potential issue. There's also the idea of incorrect classification, but for more than one entity in a space. What this means is that, like, say, in the Perrin house, they had mostly human spirits. It was a very old house, but there was one spirit that had the markers of being a demon. And if you are looking at phenomena, say footsteps and knockings, but it turns out to be a human spirit, you just inadvertently classified something as wrong. The way that I personally did it was that I looked at all the phenomena that was happening at the time because a demon will never be operating on just one level. They like to up the ante themselves and bring nightmares essentially to life. So there will be more than one thing happening besides just footsteps or just knockings, though they may start that way slowly and then work their way up to bigger manifestations of power. But there will be an indication of some other sort that what you're dealing with is a demon because their power is much greater than other types of entities. And then shadow people could be more than one entity, but a very easy form to take on our plane. This is something that I have noticed when I was looking at shadow people for this presentation, that shadow people end up in so many different categories and they seem to be very different. A predator is not very much like a sentinel or like a visitor, which sounds extraterrestrial. So I can't help but wonder, is this just an easy form for them to take? And a good example of this is that shadow people also show up in skinwalker narratives that very clearly have something to do with the skinwalker because tracks will be seen of theirs. So this is something that is happening sort of across the board, which makes me think that maybe this is something that every spirit can do to come and scout humans and spy on us. So yeah, there are issues with classification, but I do think it has merit because we can come to a much greater understanding of the paranormal, or at least scratch the surface of this very deep subject. We'll never probably actually know all that we can about it, but we do the best we can as we research in this amazing paranormal world of ours and just document and classify and organize the information and possibly come to a greater understanding of these entities and what they're capable of and the way that they behave. But this can also be used to classify positive experiences as well. It has a very wide range of possibilities. I tend to focus on the negative because I find negative supernatural phenomena stays with us a little bit more, and I find it more fascinating. But yeah, that's all I have for you guys. Thank you so much to Ryan for inviting me, and yeah, I'll see you guys later. Bye.